Hi guys, just wanted to, before this video starts, I just wanted to let you know that this is a video in response to all the people that have been asking me about what's been going on with the house, what's been going on with the divorce, private messaging me, asked me was everything okay, and I just would go sort of back over to through 2024 and tell you what's been happening with the house and why in videos I kept saying I'm not doing much till I have more security around the house. I'm answering those questions, and I'm also giving you a health update on myself and on the rest of the family and what we went through in 2024 and what we've gone through in the 42 days of 2025 and why we will not be starting the new year, or officially starting the new year, until the 1st of March. That's about it. But if it's something you're into, I know it's very long, it's nearly an hour long, but if it's something you'd like to just hear me chatting, and grab yourself a cup of coffee, get some bickies, it's a long one, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. Hello guys, good afternoon and welcome back to my channel. So this is a video I was going to do in January, but things didn't pan out well in January. I was going to do a review of 2024, and I tried doing it with putting in clips that I had recorded from 2024. And every time twice I went to upload it, and twice it kept telling me that it was corrupt. So this will be my third time trying to upload this video, third time trying to upload it, but my second time recording it. But I'm not going to put in all the fancy bits. I might link videos, but I'm not putting in all the fancy bits because I think, sorry, there's a hair, I can see a hair. I think that's what's corrupting it. So I'm just going to have a look back at 2024. Maybe some things that were going on in the background that I didn't say anything about because it was going on at the time, or I don't know, some other stuff that maybe you didn't know. But you know what? I think overall 2024 was actually a good year. I know the end of 2024 I felt so mentally strong. Physically, obviously I've done nothing to work on my core strength, but mentally, I felt really, really good. I felt I was in a good headspace. We'd had a brilliant we'd won some battles. Now, we didn't win the war. The war hasn't started yet. But we won some battles that it was only after the fact where I could stop, that I could sort of go, wow, well done, Orla. You did good there. Do you know, that type of way? But I didn't realise at the time. So yeah, that was a bit weird, but not weird. Weird's the wrong word for it. That was a bit like, looking back at it, I sort of went, geez, girl, you did good. But at the time, I didn't know I was doing good, if that makes sense. I felt I was struggling and I was losing. But yeah, anyway, so I have got a little piece of paper here with me just to take notice of some of the things that had happened, because do you know what, I can't remember barely what I did last week, let alone what I did last January. Yeah. Anyway, so I'm going to go through last January, then I'm going to go through the beginning of 2025 and why I have put off sort of starting my new year, if that, until we start it in February. We may even delay it till March because, yeah, shit's still going on. Anyway, getting back to January 2024, we had a great New Year's, and myself, Kerry, Hayley and Hayley's friend went over to America, and that was a brilliant trip. That was just all girls, went over. Carl stayed here with the dog. My mum stayed here. I shouldn't say she didn't go away. And we just had a really, really chilled out time, I suppose. It was just nice. There was no visiting parks. There was no set agendas going over. Sorry, I'm just looking, my radiator's on and it's blowing one of my flowers. Anyway, there was no agenda going on. So it was really, really nice and I really enjoyed it. And it was a nice way to start the year. Then when we came back from America, within sort of 3 weeks, it was Carl's birthday, which again was nice. It was something to look forward to. And yeah, he turned 20, so it was a big milestone for him. So that was nice. Don't think we did anything really special for it. It was just a nice family meals and stuff like that. And we had a really chilled out time. Then in March, I got a letter from my lender to say that I was due in court with them. Now, this is something I haven't spoke about on here. I did keep saying in videos, I don't know how long I'm going to be here, so I'm not doing too much to the house. And I think people just assumed that it was to do with the divorce. The divorce is one facet of it, but the other part was the vulture fund that our mortgage is with. I only learned all this, had not been paid in a while. I didn't know the extent of it until I got the letter to say, by the way, you're going to court and we're going after the house. And I thought, so in the middle of it all, we'd all this going on, and we went to court. That was in March. We went to court, and obviously I was representing myself because it was very last minute. Normally they send you a letter like the day before you're due in court. So it was a bit all over the place. Sorry, I'm moving the chair so I can put my leg up on it. And I went to court and I represented myself, and there was obviously the lender's solicitor was there, and then out of the blue, the other person who's on the mortgage with me, their solicitor turned up, and I was like, right so. And he was going on about how he'd made proposals and he was doing all this. And I will give hats off to the county register. She says, do you live in the house? And I was like, yeah. She says, do you know anything about this going on? And I said, no. So they were ordered to tell me if they were making any proposals, obviously about my living arrangements, they were to let me know. So I was like, okay. And she adjourned it to May to give me a chance to speak to someone or do something about it or work out something, but anyway, till May. So in that time then so from March to May, I had to go, she gave me 28 days. Did she give me 28 days to put something in to the lender? And I said, okay, now it's 28 working days. So it worked out that it was sort of the beginning of May, I think it had to be in by. And then they had 28 days to respond, which was going to be after the court date, but it would have been fairly near the court date. So I was like, right, okay. And fair play, I hats off to Mabs, the lady that was in the court for Mabs. She took down all the dates for me because they were just rattling them off. And obviously this was my first time meeting his solicitor. It was also my first time in court up against the lender. And I was like, whoa, I'm so overwhelmed, so overstimulated. Anyway, she gave me time to go do that. And I did. Within, I'd say, about 3 days of coming out of court, I was sitting down with the financial advisor, Mabs. And I remember at the time thinking to myself, well, not thinking to myself, I was saying it to my dad up in heaven or down below, wherever he went. I was saying to him, just make it so I can afford it. Because it's a big mortgage. That's the one thing I will say. It's a huge mortgage. And it's actually the same, just slightly more than what we borrowed back in 2007. So that'll give you his ideas. But anyway, it was a lot of money. And I kept saying, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I'm only working part-time. And when I went in to meet the guy in Mabs, I was so defeated. And I think one of the only reasons I went to do that was because this sounds daft, but I didn't want the kids to think that there was an option that I could have gone and spoke to Mabs, even though in my heart of hearts, I truly believed they could not help me. I didn't want them to think that there was an option there that I didn't take or I didn't look into or I hadn't explored every avenue. So that was the main reason I went to Mabs, not hoping a whole lot. But I did say to my father, Lord rest his soul, I said to him, if you can make it where I can afford it without it taking everything that we have, if I could just do it where I could afford it, I would be happy. So the guy from Mabs anyway rounded up all my information and I printed off more documents than I thought I ever needed in a lifetime. We got them all together, and in Ireland they have a system where it's your standard living costs. So they look and say, okay, I will say myself and Carla are in the house. They would say, as two adults in the house, you need, I'm picking numbers here. Now, these aren't the real numbers. I am literally picking numbers. So you need €100 for food. Heating and electricity, you need €50, and they work out what their minimum standards are for living. Now, in those minimum standards, there is things like social inclusion, there was like something else. I know there was something that I said, I don't even know what that is, but when he explained it to me, it made sense. But they allow you this much. And we went through it all, and then we went through what we would propose to pay. And he said, I remember him sitting there and he said, okay, leave everything with me. I'll come back to you in a week. It was the longest week of my life because you don't want to get hope up. You don't want to think maybe it's in grasp, maybe I can just get there. And you also didn't want to sit at home going, there's not a chance. So you were trying to walk this tightrope of being optimistic but not too optimistic, and trying to keep a reality check on yourself without being pessimistic, if that makes sense. I don't even know if this is making sense. I'm just waffling here, lads. I'll probably listen to this back and go, oh, no, what are you talking about? But we were walking this line, and a week later he came back to me and he went, I have good news and I have bad news. And I thought, oh crap. He said, the good news is you have €20 above the disposable income. So when he took off all my living costs that they give you as a standard, and then what we were proposing to pay, there was €20 left. And I was like, no way. And he was like, you can afford this. And I was like, no way. Now you're taking the mick, like you're trying to get my hopes up. And he was like, no. Or he said, if you couldn't afford it, I'd say to you, you can't afford it. So I was like, oh, okay. He says, well, we do up a proposal. So he says, look, come in and meet me. And we went through it and we did up a proposal. We were asking for a bit of a write down so I could afford it, all this type of stuff. And he said to me, look, chances are, he said, they're going to reject it. He said, because normally what they do is they'll take it in because it's coming from MABS, they'll reject it. And I said, okay, well, where does that leave us then if they've rejected it? He said, we don't panic. He said, we'll go to a PIP, which is a personal insolvency advisor person. I don't know, whatever it is anyway. Them. And he said, they'll put in the proposal, probably the exact same proposal as what we've already done. But he said the difference is they can just reject MABS off and go, no, we're not interested in that. End of story, and it's done. With a PIP, it has to go to court and they have to justify as to why they will not accept a reasonable proposal from you. So that was the big difference. But he said, look, because he said that can be expensive. He says, before we go down the PIP route, he said, we will go down and just put in the proposal, chance our arms, knowing it's going to be rejected. He said 99.9 of these get rejected. I said, oh, okay. He says, so, don't get your hopes up, but look, at least you can show the court that you are actively trying to find a resolution to this. So I said, okay. So all this is going on in the background. Now, in the meantime, we had Kerry move out of her accommodation in Galway, where she was renting off a lady, moving into student accommodation. We went and that went on. What else went on? Easter, all that was in between. And bearing in mind, I had mentioned none of this to my kids or my mum. The reason I hadn't mentioned it was because I didn't want to get their hopes up that there may be a chance that we could hang on to the house. Now, this is just with the lender. This is not to do with the mortgage. No, or not to do with the mortgage. This is not to do with the divorce. The divorce is a whole other story. This is like just keeping one away from the door while the other one queues up behind them. Okay, so that's how that's working. So obviously the divorce still hasn't moved anywhere, but that was there sort of, I was sorting out the lender. Now my ex-partner has to agree to the terms when it if it was to get approval, he has to approve it because he's on the mortgage. So it was getting very complicated and very stressful, to say the least, lads, to say the least. So, well, I'm losing my train of thought. So they went off and they looked at that. They received it. I got a letter back off them saying they'd received it. And that was it. It went quiet then. And that was the killer. The killer was knowing that a group of men and women were going to sit around a boardroom, look at it and go yay or nay. They didn't know me, they didn't anything, and that was the hardest thing, was sitting waiting. So in May then I ended up going back to court. Again, I had told Carol what was going on, because obviously I was so stressed. Now, in between this, from March to May, I was making the mortgage payments that I had said I could make. So I was already trying to prove to them that I could make it. And the pressure that put me on at the end of the month was absolutely horrendous. Like, I would be sweating the week before the mortgage was due, trying to work out monies and trying to work out everything. It was just, yeah. Obviously, I went from, not that I didn't have to worry about it, but not to this extent, not to this amount. And it was just horrendous. And I was getting so stressed where Carl was going, will you tell me what's going on, please? And I was going, look, you don't need to be stressed about this. And he said, Mum, I'm more stressed the fact that you're so stressed and I don't know what you're stressed about. I probably wouldn't be half as stressed if I knew what you were stressing about. And I thought, wow, okay. Talk about confusing someone with words. So I told him what was going on. And I told him about the proposal after going in and all this. And he was like, okay, cool. We will sit and wait. And God love him, every day he'd wake up and he'd come down and check the post. And I was like, this is daft. Like, because we were literally on edge, because we knew the court date was getting close. So we ended up going then back to court in May. And at that point, Carl decided he would come with me. And because he's over 18, he's allowed in the court. So I have to take a drink. So he said, look, I'll come with you, moral support. I said, well, don't be surprised now, like if they asked you to leave. And he was going, why? And I was going, I don't know. I was coming up with daft reasons. But anyway, he came with me. And we were only sitting in the court, I'd say about 10 minutes. Now, when I'm saying we're sitting in the court, when you get called for the court, I don't know if people are aware, but there's like 40 cases listed, and you're told roughly when you're going to be called. So it could be under 10:30, and there could be 5 cases listed. Then under 11 o'clock, there's another so many cases listed. So you can roughly gauge when, but some people turn up, some people don't, some get pushed to the end, whatever. So we were sitting there, I don't know, I can't even remember the time our case was up at. Oh, it was late. It was in the afternoon, I think. No, it wasn't. It was 10:30. That one was early. It was the one after that was later. So the 10:30 when we went in, and we were sitting on, they're like wooden benches, like mass pews. And we're sitting there, and next thing this barrister comes in, and they're like, you have to understand, the court is just full of them. Like, there must be 15 of them sitting around all waiting for stuff. And I could see one of the barristers talking to Mabs, took no notice of her. I was chatting with Carl. Next thing, she comes and sits beside me. She was my ex-husband's barrister. And she said to me, would you like me to talk on your behalf? I said, absolutely not. Like, go away. And she said, okay. So I went up and I was talking to Mabs, and I was saying to her, look, I don't want this woman speaking on my behalf. And she said, that's fine. You say to the registrar when you stand up, she's not with me, she's with someone else, and I'm speaking on my own behalf. So I said, okay. So we did that. And when we went up, the judge or the registrar was like, so did you submit your thing? And I didn't have to say that much that day, because the lender stood up and went, yes, we have received a proposal. It's actually going in front of the committee. And he said the following week, and we will know back then. And she was like, that's brilliant. Just let them know, blah, blah, blah. So I also had, then when we were leaving, my ex's barrister said to me, look, can we talk for a few minutes? And I was like, oh my God. Turns out she'd only been brought on to his case. Whatever floats his boat. He told me barristers ages ago. Maybe he changed barristers. I don't know. But there was a senior counsel and a junior counsel, a solicitor, and someone else involved. I can't remember who else she said. And she was like, would you be open to, and I was like, would you be open to negotiations? And I was like, sure. This is the same question they asked me the previous December, and no one had bothered coming back to me. So it was just play. So I was like, yeah. So I spoke to her for about 5-10 minutes, and off we went. Myself and Carol went into town, we did our lunch, and we did a nice, it was nice because then it was adjourned till November. Was it November? Sorry, I'm just looking down at my notes. Yeah, it was adjourned till November. So that was grand. Came home. It's still going about our business. We'd had birthdays. We'd been down visiting Mum. We'd been up visiting. Excuse me, my apologies. We'd been up visiting Hayley. We're just sort of getting on with our life, but it was still hanging over us. So, in about a week later, a letter came through the door, and I think I was in work, and Carol said to me, "There's a letter." And I was like, "Oh, sorry." In the meantime of all this, we'd also Carol applying for college places and stuff. It was a bit stressy now, I have to say. But a letter arrived anyway, and it said, we accept your proposal. And I was like, no, Carol, read it again, because he was reading out to me over the phone. I was like, no, read that again, because I was told it was going to be rejected. We're going to have to go back. We're going to get a PIP. Then we'd fall under the PIP protection, and then we'd go to court again, and it would be with the PIP. And he was like, "Ma'am," he said, "I'm reading it." He said, it says they've accepted your proposal. And I was like, nah, things don't happen that easy for me. And he said, right, he said, "I'm going to send you photos." So he sent me photos anyway, and we read it, and I sent it to the guy I was dealing with in MABS, and I was like, have they accepted it? Now, it sounds daft, because literally it says, "We accept." And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "But it wasn't meant to happen that easy." And he said, "I've never seen it happen that easy." He said, "Obviously the gods were on your side, or the angels were on your side, or my father was pulling strings with somebody, or whatever, but they approved it." But then it came on, then there was terms, this is how much you're going to pay. And I think they upped it by the €20, something daft. And I remember thinking, oh, with that penny, but they upped it by the €20 that we had spare. And then it was my payment schedule, what day each month it had to be paid, and all this malarkey. So I was like, cool, brilliant. But it was what we had been doing since the March anyway, since I first spoke to the guy in MABS with the extra €20. So then at the end it says, right, it's on a 1-year trial. And I get it. They want to make sure I can pay. They want to make sure that Christmas, Easter, birthdays, everything are going to come and go, and there's going to be no interruption to their payment. And I get that. I mean, it's business at the end of the day. So we did that and chuffed with ourselves. Now, after this 1 year, the guy in MABS was saying to me, this is where it goes, where if it's to become longer term, this is when your ex is going to have to come in and approve it, or fight it, or do something. So I was like, okay, cool. So as I said to you, the big war, the divorce, or him having to approve all this, hasn't started yet. But the little battles along the way we've won so far, without getting too ahead of myself. So then his solicitor rang me in August. Back in August, I get a phone call. I got an email to say, will you speak to the solicitor informally, just to sort of feel out where we are with each other? I said, yeah, sure, whatever. So I took the phone call in my car. I'll never forget it. I was in the car park of Lidl's, because I was going in to do a shop. And I was just like, this is so, like, not that it's funny, but it was like, this is ironic. I'm sitting in a car park waiting to go and do my weekly shop, and I have this fella ringing me going, so this is what we're thinking. And I'm just like, go away. But anyway, we spoke, and at the end of the conversation, he was like, all right, he said, I'm going to write out to you in 2 weeks, and we'll have a chat. Sorry, I'm skipping all over the place here. In November, no, hang on. No, not November. Let me just stay where I am. So the solicitor rang. He said, so I'll contact you in 2 weeks. I'll write out and we'll get the ball rolling and we'll get this sorted. And, we'll try and move along. Now, at this stage, I said to him, when do you expect this to go to court if everything can be agreed quite quickly? And he said, September, October. That was in August. I have not heard from them since. I don't know if what's happening. But I'm not worrying about that at the moment. I am keeping the roof over my head at the moment, and that's all I worried about. So then we had to go back in November to court. This is what I was saying. And when we got there, they were lovely. The lender said to me, he said, I know your proposal was approved. So he said, and he was lovely this time. He said to me, he said, all I'm going to do is when I stand up, he said, all I'm going to do is ask for it to be adjourned. And normally they adjourn it for 6-8 months. He said, just to make sure the proposal is working. And he said, that's all I'm going to ask the judge for, or the registrar for. He said, there'll be no other sort of business going on. And I said, oh, okay, thank you very much. But I was in court. I would not trust them to stick to the word unless I was in court. Now, not that these people have any grievance against me. They don't know me from Adam. We're a number on a book. That is it. But I just thought to myself, do you know what? I'll turn up in court. And in fairness, true to his word, he literally stood up and went, the proposal was put through. It has been approved. We're just seeing how it works out. And the county registrar just said to me, okay, I'm going to adjourn it till April next year. And that'll give us, well, November, December, January, February, March, April. So 5 months, 6 months to see how it was working out. And she said, probably when we come back then, she says, we'll adjourn it for another 6 months. That'll be your year up where a decision has to be made. I said, that's perfect. So they're all, as I said, the registrar was absolutely lovely. She explained everything that was going on in the court when you stood up to speak to her. She was very, very good. Sorry, my SD card's going to run out. I have to run up and get another one. But so I had all that going on in the background, and I still hadn't told the girls and my mum about it. So to say myself and Carol now were stressed, but it was just one of those things. And then I was also trying to keep up with my YouTube and keep up with normal things that were happening and working and doing all this. And yeah, it was a very, very stressful time. But I'm going to go up and change my SD card, and I will be back to you, well, for you in a second. For me, probably 5 minutes. I'm going to drink my tea as well. Sorry, lads. Just like that, I am back. Cup of tea drank and 2 biscuits eaten. Mr. T has had his dinner, so we're all happy. Anyway, I was saying about October. So just before October, I went away with my mum to Kerry, and we had a great time. And I don't know if it's mother's intuition or something. She rang me up and said to me, I've already booked and paid for this holiday. It's not really an option of not going, but I'd like you to come. And I went, but I haven't even asked for time off work, blah, blah, blah. And she was like, okay, we'll try. Walked into work and they were like, yeah, take the time. So I ended up going away with my mum, and it was the most relaxing time I'd had in a very long time. And I slept hours, and we went out on tours, and we had beautiful food. And it was just what I needed at that point. Obviously, I hadn't been back in court in October, but I knew things were settling down. I started telling my mum some of it. And I don't know, some sort of intuition. She was like, I knew you needed this holiday. So I was like, okay. So it ended up anyway in October, or in November, we ended up getting postponed to January or to April. Fine, brilliant. We'll deal with that when that comes up. So then we rolled around to Christmas, and I was like, Vlogmas came around, and I thought we had the best Vlogmas I think I've ever done. I really enjoyed it. I didn't feel under pressure with it. I didn't feel like every day I was sort of going, oh my God, well, what am I going to do? I sort of had it planned out, and everything seemed to be going to a plan. And I had a nice flow. I think it had a nice flow to it. Now, feel free in the comments to disagree with me and say, no, it wasn't actually that good, Orla. Or you could have improved it this way, whatever. But I think we had a good Vlogmas. And that took us in. We had a really chilled out Christmas. Really, really chilled out Christmas. Everyone was here, and everybody was chilled. We were all enjoyed the food. We didn't have, the way some Christmases you can go where you have tons of leftover food and you're sort of going, oh my God, I hate food waste. So how do we use this up? We sort of had the right amount of food, and we used everything we needed to use. And it was just a good Christmas. And yeah, Hayley came down, and she wanted to go back to her doctor to change her meds for her migraines and get all that looked at. And the doctor she was seeing gave her a list of medicine she had to go away before, and she had to go away and she had to go through the meds and sort of pick which one she wanted, if she wanted to try any of them, whatever. By the time it came around to us making an appointment with this guy again, he'd actually retired. Not that he was, that sounds terrible, we didn't leave it that long, like we probably left it a bit too long, but it wasn't daft time, but he had retired. And I'd gone to my doctor, I think in November, if I'm remembering this correct, with a bit of a sinus infection. And I'd said to you, my blood pressure was a little bit up, but he thought maybe it was just white coat syndrome, where your blood pressure goes up because you're stressed going to the doctor. But in December, he put me on a 24-hour blood pressure monitor. And I did the 24 hours, gave it back in, didn't think any more of it. And I didn't hear from him till after Christmas. So I thought, well, it can't be that urgent if I'm not hearing until, they haven't come back to me straight away. Yeah, no. He came back to me and he said, I need you to come down and make an appointment for a blood test. He said, I want to get blood tests off you. And I said, okay, fine. And he said to me, I also need to talk to you about your blood pressure. I said, oh. I said, is it bad? And he said, well, it's not great. I said, okay. So down to the doctor I went, and he told me I had high blood pressure. So I was like, okay, that's fine. He gave me a tablet to take. He said, you take this once a day. It'll regulate your blood pressure, blah, blah, blah. I said, right, so. And he said to me, he says, by any chance, he says, do you live a very stressful life? And that's me being me. I went, I don't think so. I don't feel stressed. And he was like, oh, okay. He said, well, usually high blood pressure and stuff can come from a sedate life and a stressful life is the two big contributors, and you smoke. And I said, well, I don't smoke anymore. So he was like, okay. So he said, well, they can be the contributor. I was like, fine, okay, grand. And when I came home and I said it to Carl, I said, yeah, he said, did I have a stressful life or whatever? And Carl looked at me, and it was the look of, actually, I don't know what it was. It was like, are you serious right now? He said, Mum, we've gone through one of the most stressful years ever. And I was going, oh yeah, because he applied for college, then he got accepted into college, then we were waiting, all this, we had to apply for grants and we had to do stuff like that. So there was, as well as dealing with the house, we were dealing with Carl starting college, Kerry moving accommodation, Hayley and her migraines, Hayley and her anxiety, then Carl getting accepted to college, then him needing to obviously get clothes and get other stuff for college. And when I think back, I go, how did we stay upright? And work on top of it. And the work I do, for those who don't know, I work with people with intellectual disabilities who are also in a form of addiction. So I'm going to say this in the night, I don't find my job stressful. I don't think it's stressful. I actually really, really enjoy it. But when you're describing it to someone, they go, oh my God, you must be so stressed. And I'm going, no. Now, maybe I am the type of person that doesn't outwardly show stress. I don't feel stress. Maybe my body does. I don't know. But yeah, that was sort of a moment where Carl went, you are living on another planet, Mum. I was just like, oh, okay. Anyway, so we went down, and I think that was around the 4th of January. Hayley went to see her doctor. Since Hayley's doctor retired, we actually moved her doctor. So she was in doctor here. She went to him, she got new medication. I went to her, it was actually a girl, Laura. She went and she got new medication. And Hayley was meant to go back up. Hayley was meant to go back up to do exams in Letterkenny at the beginning of January. And the doctor, the way colleges work in Ireland, you do exams quite early after in January. But usually they're officially not back in college until around the 20th of January, give or take. I think Carl was back to 27th. But it's a long time off then once they have the exam, the repeat exams done before they go back to college. Kerry was the first one to go down and do exams. She went out with my mum, I think on the 2nd of January. Now this is why we didn't start the new year in January, because no, we're just not doing that. So then Kerry came back and all the kids got sick. They all ended up with COVID. And Kerry got it like a heavy cold. Carl got it very bad. It was on his chest and he was hacking away for weeks. And Hayley got it. So Hayley had to miss an exam. So did Kerry. And so did Carl, actually. But they got their exemptions, whatever, to say that they could resit them in the summer. But they had COVID. So then, as I said, I had my tablets for my blood pressure. I started taking them, I think around the 4th of January. I'm not sure, but in around that date. And then they all got COVID. I was like, seriously, lads. So the doctor had done my bloods then. It must have been later, maybe. I can't remember the exact timeline. So when Hayley got her tablets, she was told to sort of try, do you have to go back to Donegal straight away? And she was like, well, no, I'm not back in school, I think till the 20th. And the doctor was like, good, stay here just till you get your side effects and your body adjusts to it, because there's slow release that you need to take. And because they're for migraines and stuff, they can take a bit of getting used to, and they can be quite harsh on the body. So if you can stay down with your mum, stay down with your mum. So she was like, oh, okay, fine. So she was staying here. Kerry had gone back, at this stage, had got the all clear, and I'd gone back down to Galway, and she was going out to my mum. I was on my high blood pressure tablets, and it was a Thursday, the 16th of January, never forget it, etched in my brain. I was working with a client. I had just dropped him home, and I was going to fly into Penny's to pick up a pair of pyjamas. I don't know why. I don't know what possessed me. I wanted these. I'd seen them earlier with the client, but I didn't want to buy them in front of the client. And I ended up going back into Penny's. I have some video that I took in Penny's, and it's all fine. And then I remember getting very dizzy in Penny's, and I thought, oh my God, I'm going to faint. That's what it felt like. But I was just saying, well, it's cold out. Maybe the heating up in here, that's crazy high. And I was sweating, and I was doing this, and I just felt shit. And I actually ended up having a non-semi heart attack in Penny's, and I didn't know that till I went to the hospital. Obviously, because I was in Penny's or Primark, they had first aiders there. One of the girls that came over, like there was 3 girls who sat with me, and they were absolutely brilliant. They never left my side. They kept talking to me, even though I didn't want to talk to them, as in I just couldn't talk to them. They sat with me the whole time. When I was sweating, I mean, I've never had a heart attack before, but I had this sweat come on me, and I could feel it running down my hair. My hair was wet at the back from the amount of sweat that was going on. And one of the girls got up. She was so kind. She got a hair bobbin. She actually pulled my hair and put it up in a bobbin just to keep it up so it was cool around my neck. I mean, silly, like one girl, I had a cardigan, I'd taken my cardigan off, obviously, because I didn't feel very well. Now, at this stage, I had sat myself on the ground, and she'd folded everything. I had my work backpack, because I was coming back from work. I had my work backpack, which had very little in it, only my work diary, my own diary, and a couple of bits that you carry to work, like. And she packed everything in there for me, and they were so nice. And then there was another girl who seemed to be more senior, or maybe higher trained in the first aid response, I'm not sure. She went out to the chemist, and she actually got the chemist to give me a 300 milligrams, I think it was 300 milligrams, 300 I think it was, of aspirin. And they made me chew that, and she was taking my pulse, and she was seeing if I could still move my arms. At one point I just couldn't move my arms, couldn't move my legs. I was just I wanted to lie down on the floor, and I just wanted them all to leave me alone. And I know that sounds horrible, but they were doing nothing wrong, and I was so grateful that they didn't leave me alone. Do you know what I mean? But anyway, they called paramedics, and paramedics came and took me by ambulance to Tala Hospital. And at this stage, I had vomited and everything, and I said to the paramedics, so I actually feel okay. And he said, well, will you do me a favour? Will you just go to hospital and just get this blood test that they do? Is it taupe? I'm not sure what it's called. And he said, just get that. He said, that will say if there's anything, a heart episode after happening, by the numbers they see back. I said, oh, okay, no problem. I said, right. And he said, look, it might take 3 hours, he said, but at least you'll know for certain. Because at this point, I had started to convince myself it was a panic attack. I was like, that's all it was, panic attack. And he was going, just do this blood test. And I was like, oh, okay, fine. So he was like, look, you've nothing to lose. It's 3 hours out of your life, you know. I was like, okay, fair enough. I do have to say the thought did cross my mind when I was sitting on the floor in Penny's. When I looked up, there was pyjamas and there was stuff, but there was also the knicker aisle. And I thought, I am not having that. When the kids are asked, oh my God, I'm sorry to hear about your mum. Where did she die? At the knicker aisle in Penny's. That wasn't going to happen. So now I did feel at a certain point that like, this is it. I'm just destined to die here. And then I felt okay after. And it was the weirdest thing. But went up to the hospital and where they do the heart was fine. But he said to me, humour me, the doctor said to me, he said, humour me and do me this blood test. I said, okay, whatever, I'm here now, sure, I might as well. Did the blood test. Now, from what I was told, it should be around 12 to 14. I was told this by my own doctor when I went to visit him. And it was up at 136. And he said, okay, something's gone on with the heart. And I went, oh, okay. Then he said, we're going to just keep redoing the test. And I said, okay, fine. They had an easy, the easy needle in where they could keep taking blood. They didn't have to keep jabbing me. And I went and I got that done. I went from 136 to 140 something, 143 to 147. And I think the last one I got done was 156. And it was so funny because every time the results were due, a nurse or a doctor would open my curtains and go, are you in pain? And I just went, no, which I wasn't. They're like, okay, are you sure? And I'm like, positive. The only thing that sort of saved my grace while I was in the hospital, because obviously you're sitting in the A&E, I was in a cubicle right next to the nurse's station. And I had my diaries with me. And one of the things I loved doing was writing in diaries. So I was documenting everything while I was up there. And it actually was brilliant because it kept my brain busy. And then they turned around to me and went, right, well, we're going to have to admit you. I thought, for what? So this doctor came in. I remember we was dressed all in green scrubs. He came in, sat at the bed and was like, look, this is what your blood test is telling us. We need to admit you to see what the hell is going on. And I was like, oh, well, okay, that makes sense. But this is it, right? I hadn't rang the kids to tell them. Now, they did offer him pennies to ring, and I was like, no, certainly not. When I got to the hospital, the nurse says, I will ring I was certainly not. The kids are at home by themselves. Most certainly not. And at the time, my mum and Kerry were out in Connemara. And I mean, there's absolutely no way they could get up to me. And even if they did try and get up to me, it would be the next day. So there was no point in worrying everybody. But Hayley texted me and went, your location on your phone is showing that you're at A&E. But I was out with a client. See, I hadn't come home from being out with a client. And she went, is the client okay? And I went, yeah, the client is fine. Don't worry about it. I didn't correct her and say, actually, it's me that's here, not the client. But I didn't want her to panic either, which is daft now, because if anything other major happened, they would have just got a phone call from the hospital and they would have been like, we know nothing about this. Anyway, I did tell them then what was happening, and we went through it all. And about 4 o'clock in the morning, I was admitted up to the CCU, the cardiac care unit. And I was seen by a load of doctors at that point. There was just loads of them. And one doctor said to me, he said, like, okay, I'm 48, but he said, like, as the standard of people we see in here with heart attacks, he says, you're on the lower end, the younger age scale. And I was like, oh, okay. So he said, we need you to get a wrist angiogram. I said, okay. Hadn't a clue what he was telling me, but I'd been awake now nearly 24 hours at this stage. They could have told me I had to go and they're going to put me on my head and spin me, and I would have gone, okay, that's fine. If this is just going to let me get asleep at some point. So I was hooked up to monitors and stuff and I couldn't move. So, yeah, a bit bizarre. But, well, it wasn't bizarre, it was for my own safety. But anyway, the next day I had a wrist angiogram. And there was no blockages, no, I think there was a small part of cholesterol or plaque, is that what they call it? Plaque. That was starting on the arteries, but there was nothing. I didn't need stents, didn't need anything. I just had very early signs. And the doctor who was there at the time doing it, he said to me, he said, it's so unusual. He said, normally when I'm doing these, I'm putting in stents to open up everything or see what the blockage is. He says, you don't have a blockage yet. And he just came over, and I remember I was lying down because obviously they were going up to my wrist, and he said to me, he said, I'm going to say this to you now. You are one of the luckiest person I've seen who's got such early warning signs. And he said, if you don't heed these warning signs, he said, you are one very, very silly woman. And I just went, okay. And I suppose at the time I sort of was just like, okay, can I go back to my room now? Because I want to sleep. I need to sleep. So that evening then, anyway, came back, everything, he was happy, and I have to see him in 6 months. But everything came back fine. He was like, we're going to discharge you. And I was like, okay. So he was like, you need to make some lifestyle changes, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, fine, no problem. So then I came home and I still hadn't told my mum or Kerry. Now the two kids know. Carl had actually come up to the hospital with a change of clothes for me. Deodorant, bits that I needed. He brought them all up to me. Hayley had packed a bag. She put my glasses in it, like just stuff that I needed. And I came home anyway. I got a taxi home and I arrived home, but my car was still up at the shopping centre. So I said to Carl, I have to go up and collect my car. He said, it'll do tomorrow. Don't be panicking. So I said, okay. So we left it anyway. And when I did go up to collect my car, they wanted €66 off me because my car had been there parked up. And I just went, look, I was taken out of here by ambulance. And they were like, no problem. And I have to say, hats off to them. They actually waived the fee and were like, yeah, not your problem. Don't worry about it. So that was grand. Came home, was resting. And I was saying to Kerry, you going to come up? She was like, yeah. And then we got a warning that the red warning was coming in the weekend. And I was like, I was going to go down and meet my mum and Kerry in Galway City and have lunch with them and tell them. Because I wanted to tell them to their faces so they could see I was okay. And the red warning came in and I couldn't get down to my mum. I couldn't get down to Kerry. And at this stage I'd been, I think, a week at a hospital. And I had a 2-week cert for work and I thought, what the hell do I do here? So I spoke to my mum on the Thursday night, just chatting to her on the phone. And then on the Friday the storm hit. Then I didn't hear from my mum and it was Sunday evening before I heard from my mum. And I didn't even hear from my mum. I got in my car and went down, took Kerry out with me. I have to say, I think I was so scared driving. I was so scared in case there was another episode or there was something happened. But I went down anyway and I told my mum and Kerry while I was down there. Now Kerry, rightly so, and I get it. She was so annoyed with me that I hadn't told her. But as I said to her, what was I going to tell you? Because you were out with Grandma. There was no buses, there was no nothing. All you would have done is lay awake at night, worried, sick, you and Grandma. For what use? I was lying awake, worried, sick. So one of us doing it was enough. So she was very annoyed. Not that she didn't speak to me, she did speak to me, but I could tell she was very hurt over it. But looking back, I don't think I'd changed the decision I made not to tell her because, as I said, she was so far away. There was no point in stressing everybody out. So what else happened in January? So we had COVID, my heart thing, hurricane winds. There were actually hurricane force winds. How my mother didn't do a Mary Poppins and blow away, I'll never know. But anyway, she's there, and touch wood, she didn't even get damage. As I said, she had no phone, no internet, no TV, no electricity, no water, but there was no other damage done. Everything else was okay. And then the end of January, beginning of February, Mr. T decided to take ill. And I was like, 5 o'clock in the morning, he's on the bed beside me and he comes up and he puts his head into my head. And normally he doesn't do that. And I woke up and I was like, but his breathing had got so shallow. And he just sat there with his eyes so wide. And I thought, oh my bloody hell. So ended up having to take him to the emergency vet. And it just turns out that something has irritated his nose, breathing area. They gave him a boost of steroids and touch wood. He seems fine now. But yeah, that was scary. And then poor Kerry rings me. She'd been to an ABBA tribute concert. And she was as sick as a dog, as in vomiting bug. And she was like, this year is crap. And I was just like, don't worry about it, babe. So yeah, so that is why we are not starting the new year till probably the beginning of March. because so much crap has gone on. That can all stay with last year. 1st of March, things have to get better. Have to get better. I mean, I've ended up where going to the doctor over a sinus infection and getting antibiotics to now being on 5 tablets and not knowing my head from my arse. So I haven't been, this is the reason I was telling you all this. I know people say an awful lot of things, you know, on social media is fake. I couldn't tell you about any of those things because we were in the middle of doing them. And it could have gone either way. Let's be honest, the house could have gone either way. Now, as I said, they were little battles. The big battle has to come. And we will take that in our stride this year. But I didn't want you to hear it, like, because obviously, I don't want a slip of the tongue and all of a sudden you're going, what is she talking about? And I'm going, oh crap, never said that. I just wanted you to know, while I'm sitting here and showing you what I buy or what we cook or me trotting off to work or whatever, there was just so much going on in the background, and I'm hoping this year calms down a little and there isn't as much going on in the background and there isn't as much stuff just happening, that we're sort of over all that now. We're over the worst of it. It's actually funny talking to people in work and like they've all got colds in work. I haven't got a cold. That way I feel good. Like I'm not sick, shall we say? But there's so many people out there who've had at the beginning of this year, and I don't know why the beginning of this year, the man across the road from me had a heart attack. The man down the road from me was told he has to have a triple bypass. Excuse me. And I was just like, this is daft. The beginning of this year is just being daft. It's like out of a comedy show. And then there's other stuff going on in the world that's sort of making you sit there and go, this is like an alternative reality. And I've fallen into it and I don't know how. My cousin is also very sick. There's loads of stuff. There's loads of stuff that it seems to be going on. And it's all the beginning of this year. And I don't know if it's just I'm more sensitive to other people with stuff going on because I've had my own stuff going on, or if it's genuinely a crap start to a year. I don't know. I really, really don't know. But yeah, whoever's got the voodoo dolls on, a lot of people need to cut out that crap and just let us all get on with it. But yeah, so that's where I am. I just wanted to bring this up to date to let you know what's going on in the background, because I know it's easy to look at me and go, oh yeah, everything's fine. She just goes off to work, comes home. No, I don't. There's so much crap that goes on. Thanks be to God, Carol got into college. He's loving it. Kerry settled into her accommodation. She went back to that same accommodation this year. Hayley, fingers crossed, touch wood, is on her new medication. So far, the only side effect she's had is extreme tiredness and a little bit of nausea, but that seems to be dying down. So everything seems to be on the turn, shall we say. Oh my God. Last year was stressful. This year has just so far, and we're only, what date's today? The 12th of February. We're only, 30, 40, 42, 43 days into 2025, and it's been rough. It has been a rough year. So I say the new year starts in March, and we're just going to get all this crap out of the way, and we're going to start. I will be back with the vlogs. I will be back with meals of the week, food shops, lives, all that going forward. As you can appreciate, January I did not have the energy to do the vlogs. Excuse me, the vlogs. The kids were doing the shops, bringing home the shops, and I was doing them, or we were ordering online, and I was just doing them because I didn't have the energy. And I was also very nervous going into shops, thinking, oh my God, if I get too hot in here, am I going to have an episode? And that's only mentally. Like, from the heart thing, I am fine. Physically, I am fine. Mentally, I struggled just to get over the going out on my own, going into shops on my own, because what happens if? But if I lived my life by what happens if, I'd never leave the house. So we can't live like that. But it did take an awful lot of effort to push myself to get back doing stuff again. And even going back to work, I was like, what happens if something happens while I'm out with a client? And I thought, well, if it does, that, you know, you'll be fine, you'll be grand, don't worry, you know. And trying to get over mentally where I was in January it was tough. But yeah, guys, I hope I didn't bore you to tears. I just wanted to sort of do a recap of 2024. I had a lovely video done that had little inserts of different things that we'd done through the years. It would not upload. It kept saying corrupt, and I kept saying, who are you referring to? The platform? The format? Or what are you referring to? Just kept saying corrupt. It's like, right. So I decided to just re-record it and start again. So that is where I am. I hope I did not bore you to tears. I hope you survived to the end. And looking forward to doing more vlogs, shopping, food shopping, meals of the week, things like that. Now, on a side note, I am also doing not a decision, but sort of the way life has gone at the moment. I'm actually doing a very low spend. That's why there isn't many hauls coming in from shops and stuff. I don't have it spare, but not with the mortgage and stuff. So yeah, so that is where we are. I appreciate you if you did stay all the way to listen to this. Thank you so much. And I will talk to you very soon in my next video. Take care of yourselves, guys. Bye-bye.